Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. I am Barbie Cottrell, Director of First Impressions at Tedstrom Wealth Advisors. I want to welcome you to our new webinar series, Tedstrom Talks. This is the first in a series of webinars that we are producing to give our clients, business associates, friends, and family pertinent and important information on COVID-19 and other interesting and timely topics. We intend for this webinar to last about an hour and have a lot of time at the end for questions. Throughout the presentation and conversation, if you have any questions, please feel free to use the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. I would like to introduce you to Peter Tedstrom, founder and chief advisor of Tedstrom Wealth Advisors. Peter has 35 plus years experience as a certified financial planner. He has been consistently recognized through awards and recognition as one of the country's top financial advisors. Peter, take it away.
Thank you, Barbie, and hello to everybody out there. It's great to see you. Oh, wait, I can't really see you. I do see that we have about 23 participants. Hi to Amy and Marcia and Dave and Julie and Ev and Ed. I wish I could actually see you today, and hopefully you can see me, and hopefully the hour you spend with us today will be worthwhile. I wanted to start our presentation out with some good news. So often we're looking at the news these days and seeing how many new cases, how many deaths. It can be very discouraging, and we often don't see some of the good news that's out there. Some of you may have already picked up on this article that was in the New York Times this morning. The title is, "In a Race for a Coronavirus Vaccine, an Oxford group leaps ahead." They just have done a study on this vaccine with rhesus monkeys, which apparently are the most biologically similar to the human being. And they exposed these monkeys to heavy quantities of the virus. 28 days later, all 6 were still healthy. So there's good news out there, and we want to make sure that we don't just get so stuck up in the bad news that's out in the public and from the media. I'm going to start with sharing some slides here, and let's see. Can you all see those slides? Justin, nod your head if you can see the slides. Awesome, thank you. First of all, I wanted to talk about some basic principles of investing. And those of you who are our clients that are listening in today, you'll know that we've talked about these things on many, many occasions in the 30 to 35 years that I've been in the business. First of all, one of the classic quotes from Warren Buffett: "Be greedy when others are fearful," and I would add, "Be fearful when others are greedy." And we've been very fearful. The average investor has been quite fearful. Back in February, mid to late February, we saw market lows about 37% lower than the highs we'd seen in just a couple short weeks earlier. As a matter of fact, it was the quickest time. It was just 19 days to go from a bull market to a bear market. So we caution all of you to not be too afraid, to hold steady and realize that that these things they pass, and this one will pass as well. And so I already mentioned this is the fastest bear market ever for the Dow Jones Industrials. 19 days. The prior was 36 days. A quick study by LPL and the World Health Organization shows that previous outbreaks really didn't impact the markets. As a matter of fact, SARS, bird flu, swine flu, Ebola, Zika, 6 months after, the markets were all up. Now, you might say this time is different, and it is different from any of these other outbreaks, but I think it's pretty reasonable to think we might have an up market 6 months from now. Sorry about that. Let's see here. And another point here to identify, and that is you can see 22 days after a crisis, the market's up slightly, 5% of the time. 63 days, 126 days, and 253 days. And this is the batting average. This means that the chance of the market being higher after this crisis is very high. And stocks lead the economy. As I've talked to many of you over the last several months, we often see stocks lead well ahead of the economic news. We're hearing of record unemployment and companies going out of business and bad earnings. All of that information makes us feel like the stock market should be down, but the stock market often anticipates this kind of information, and we might have seen the bottom back in March. We very well may have. Now, I'm not predicting that we have, and certainly the market might retreat, but I would say that the opportunity at this time to buy and hold on to your positions in this market is very strong. Stocks rise over the long term. So even if you're afraid today, you might wonder, well, can I make any money in this market over the next 3, 5, 10 years? Well, since 1928 through 2020, you can see that 96% of the time, if you hold your stocks for 20 years, you're going to have a positive return. 15 years, you'll have a positive return 88% of the time. 10 years, 79%, and so forth. So consider staying invested. This is also a very important principle. If you miss the best 5 days of the year, your investment return on average from 1990 to 2019 was minus 6.3%. If you were fully invested over that same time frame, you made 7.7%. The differential is almost, well, it's actually 14%. And if you miss the 20 best days of the year, you are down 27% on average over that 30-year period. We're going to talk about the CARES Act today, and Justin, my guest, attorney from Lathrop, forgotten the name of your firm, Lathrop GPM, Justin, and some points that we're going to be talking about are here on this slide. And so I'd like to give you a quick introduction of Justin. Justin is a 27-time award winner of the best of the best. It's quite a stretch there, Justin, among attorneys in both Colorado and Arizona. He currently serves as co-chair of entrepreneurial services for Lathrop GPM. His practice focuses on general outside counsel services for business owners. Justin has a background as a highly successful trial litigator and is a national speaker on trial techniques, never having lost a jury trial. He now uses his experience to advise clients on how to reduce risk, achieve success, and avoid litigation. Justin's clients range from entrepreneurial innovators to late-stage middle-market companies, from small retailers to multinational companies. He establishes corporate structures, advises for growth and expansion, places appropriate legal protections, and engages in the sale and acquisition of closely held business interests. Justin's a very good friend of mine. He's also our attorney. He's taken very good care of us over the years. So I'm going to turn over the screen to Justin.
Peter, thanks so much, and thanks for having me as the first guest for Tedstrom Talks. I really am honored. I appreciate you. I appreciate Barbie, and I appreciate everybody who's attending today. We want to respect your time, and there is certainly so much we can talk about that we could spend hours and hours. We won't, but please know that we're going to try to hit as many of the key points as we can, and not only project or not only look at where we're at now, but project where we're going to be, which is so much of what Tedstrom Wealth does, so much of what I do, so that you all have expectations about where things are headed and what decisions you need to make. Peter, before we go into the legal portion, I did want to follow up, if we could, on some of the financials that you were sharing, some of the market information you were sharing. I know it's pretty volatile out there. I know people are still going to be somewhat nervous, even with the information you're describing. Do you have any other specifics that you can give us that you're advising people on their portfolios, their financial planning, their market strategies?
You bet, Justin, and thank you for that question. First of all, we remind our clients that they have a financial plan for a reason. When one has a financial plan, It's really the accomplishment of the plan and the objectives within the plan that matters. If the market's going crazy, if there's volatility that we're experiencing, we know that, we expect that. And we manage our client portfolios relative to their risk temperament. Some of our clients have much more equity in their portfolio than others. That being the case, that doesn't mean that people aren't nervous. And we don't tell people, don't be nervous, don't be afraid. We say, we understand that nervousness, but we don't want to respond to that. We want to have a logical response to the information that we receive rather than an emotional response. More often than not, if we respond emotionally in these market conditions, we'll make the wrong decision. We'll sell out at the bottom. We'll buy back when we're more confident, and our confidence comes back when stocks come back. So a few things that we've been advising about our clients over the last several months. One is, if you have cash, start thinking about how you would deploy that. And there are many ways you can do that. You don't have to take the lump sum of cash and put it in the market today, tomorrow, or even a week or a month from now. But to get back in the market gradually, we call that dollar cost averaging. Let's use an example. Let's say you have $50,000 to invest, and you want to get that invested over time. And the reason you want to do it over time is, what happens if the market drops right after we invest that new capital? It's going to feel uncomfortable. So maybe we take that $50,000 over a 10-month period of time and invest $5,000 a month, or $10,000 a month over a 5-month period of time. When doing that, that also means you have what we call dry powder. And that dry powder can be used if the market does drop again. And again, I'm not saying that it won't. And if it does, if we've got cash on the sideline, we can deploy some more capital at lower prices. And every one of us knows the old adage, buy low, sell high. We're also utilizing a strategy called tax loss harvesting. Because of the market volatility and the downward draft for stocks, our clients have positions that have losses. And so we're selling those positions currently, creating a loss for their tax return, buying another investment that's comparable to that for a 30-day period of time, and then buying back into the previously held position. Has to be 30 days or longer for that loss to be available to an individual to use against future gains. So it means that those future gains, let's say there's 10,000 in losses, that those future gains up to 10,000 will be neutralized by those losses. We're also doing some rebalancing. Rebalancing means that we got out of balance because stocks went down more than bonds. And so we're selling some bonds, buying stocks at these lower prices to get back into balance. Maybe it's a 60-40 and the client's portfolio has dropped to 55-45. One of the other strategies that we're utilizing is opportunistic buying. And that's really just saying, okay, when the stock market's down, let's put more money in. And that's one of the hardest things to do if we think about it when it's happening. And what I mean by that is that, again, let's use that $50,000 example. If we were to say, hey, when stocks go down a lot, I'm going to buy some. Well, guess what? When stocks go down a lot, nobody wants to buy. At least they don't feel comfortable buying. So we set targets. We say 5% from here, 10% from here, 15% from here. Each of those benchmarks would require, because we would agree to it, would require that additional purchase, so that we're automatically taking the emotion out of it and buying at various stages of the market. So most importantly, stick with the plan. If you can't buy now, if you're not comfortable buying now, just stay with what you've got. Don't get out of the market. You will get hurt. More often than not, in the 35 years I've been in the business, when our clients have said, I want to get out, they'll get out, certainly without necessarily we discourage them from getting out, and they don't know how to get back in. Because what happens if they get out and the market starts rising, they're going to wait for the market to fall. And more often than not, it doesn't fall as they anticipate. Wanted to give everybody an update on the portfolios as well, since we're talking about those. For those of you who have portfolios with us, we're making some slight adjustments as we speak. We're slightly heavy equities, meaning we have a little bit more equities than we would with our traditional portfolios, because we do believe a recovery will occur. Again, I don't know that I can tell you when, but I'd say several months out, we're likely to be seeing a recovery in the stock market. We're actually also adding ESG positions. ESG refers to companies that are socially responsible. And what we have found in our last 10 years of study and research is that companies that are socially responsible actually perform better as a stock. We're adding some technology. We believe technology is going to lead this recovery. We're also putting money in emerging markets. Emerging markets are beaten down significantly, and we believe the opportunity for emerging markets to outperform developed international markets is quite good. And another piece that we want in the portfolio is medical devices. We're going to add about a 5% position in medical devices. So that's a long-winded answer to your question, Justin, but thank you.
No, that's okay. I had an unexpected visitor here. So that's he's not supposed to be down here actually, but thought I would share that with everybody. And Peter, thanks for sharing all those strategies. And I know we want to launch into some of the legal things, but just one more if we can quickly, because I know there are rule changes affecting some of this as well. Issues like the RMDs, issues like 401ks. Can you real quickly, because I wasn't going to talk about this necessarily on the legal side, can you real quickly tell everybody how those rule changes are impacting the financial planning side so that everybody can anticipate, what do they expect? What are they going to expect from those types of things moving forward?
You bet. Well, the government gave us a reprieve through the CARES Act that we do not have to take our required minimum distribution. The law before the change was that at age 70 and a half, we'd have to start taking money out of our IRAs. We've been given a reprieve. Nobody has to take money out of their IRAs this year, which means they can reduce their taxable income. And if you don't need the money from the IRA, generally our suggestion is to avoid taking that. Also with 401k plans, if you do have a 401k plan, instead of being able to borrow up to $50,000 or half the balance, you can borrow up to $100,000, 100% of the balance in your 401k, up to $100,000 of value if you took that loan out between March 27 and September 23rd, and you get 6 years to pay it back. So those of you who might have lost jobs or be short on cash or seen a paycheck reduction, the 401k is an option for you to access to help you out during this tough time. And then there's one last adjustment that business owners ought to be aware of, and that is the FICA tax. FICA withholding has been delayed, and you don't need to cover the employer cost, the 6.2%, until December of 2021 for the first half to repay it, and December 2022 for the second half. So it saves business owners and self-employed individuals about 6.2% on their payroll.
That's great information. Peter, thanks so much. I certainly want to also address questions and address the legal side of things, which is relevant both for business owners and non-business owners. Most of my work is representing business owners, but so much information has come out lately that applies to individuals and everyone we know. I mean, this is having an impact on every part of our society, every part of our economy, every part of our lives. So, certainly this is relevant for everybody, but I want to address what we think it's going to be. Peter, where do you want to start?
Well, I'd like to ask you some questions.
Please, yeah.
Absolutely. So, Justin, what business operations and policy issues should we be anticipating in the months to come?
For business operations, if asked the question, what is it going to be? The answer is it's going to be different. I think we can anticipate that we need to put permanent mechanisms in place for business leaders and leadership teams, not just because of this incident, but because of any future risk of virus. And we want to do it different because we want to do it better. But we just had too many struggles when this came about with leadership trying to create new policies, trying to identify procedures for remote working, and I think we're going to see continued requests for remote working. There are certain people who are eager to get back to work. I think we're going to see, and business owners should be prepared, we're going to see substantial requests for people to continue to work remotely. I think we're also going to see, under the Americans with Disabilities Act, people asserting a claim that now that our society knows that this type of operation is feasible and that people can work remotely, and that they have, because of some lower stress, because of lower depression, because of any number of physical or psychological issues, that they claim the right to work remotely. So businesses and people in general should be ready for those types of requests. We can anticipate that that's likely to some extent. And I think we're going to see sterilization procedures. We're going to see not only continued remote working where there are fewer people in office spaces, but to the extent people are in offices, businesses, restaurants, we're going to see a lot of the social distancing mechanisms and antivirus mechanisms remain in place. So the answer for business owners is figure out a leadership team that's going to be the primary response team, work with employees on those issues, adopt those new policies. I think that's now what we can expect as the new normal moving forward.
It's fascinating. Thank you, Justin. We've been, I think, in isolation maybe 6-7 weeks. And I don't think our firm has really missed a beat in our ability to function and provide service to our clients. We have missed the physical presence. As those of you who are out there know, I like to hug my friends and people that I care about, and we like to see you guys in person, and we don't have that. But we've got the next best thing, and we hope we've been able to provide the service at the level our clients have come to expect. I know that all businesses are thinking that. And frankly, I think we've actually become even more efficient in some ways.
You bet. You bet. We have a firm of 430 lawyers, a few hundred support staff, and we were able within 48 hours to switch to remote working. And as you described, Peter, we really didn't miss a beat because it's so much computer-based, telephonic video conference. And I think people are coming to terms with that, which for those of us who are professionals who work primarily on the computer and who are available by video, it's, part of the upside there is we can work from anywhere. And next time, you ask me to do a video conference, if you ask me again, you might see beach and ocean behind me.
Because you'll be there, or that'll be on your green screen?
So no, because I'll be there. So it really has changed primarily the comfort level. We had the technology already, but it's changed the comfort level of people recognizing that in certain professions you can do what you do from anywhere, and you can do it remotely. And Peter, you're just a great example of that.
Well, we have done Zoom meetings before because we do have clients around the country, or we have clients that don't want to drive into the city because of traffic. But yeah, it's Zoom has become a common word in everybody's living room these days. Zoom parties, Zoom cocktails, parties, happy hour, and so forth. But let's get back to business. Justin, what are the remaining options for business assistance under the CARES Act?
That's a great question. If we were going to project what's it going to be for the CARES Act, I think everybody has a good sense of what it is at the moment. Moving forward, what it's going to be is a mess. The CARES Act created a couple of different loan programs that we've all heard a lot about, we know a lot about, the Paycheck Protection Program, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program. We're in the midst of the PPP. We exhausted $349 billion. We've now had additional money that's released, and we know that's a problem for banks right now. We know the website shut down repeatedly yesterday, but some people have a grasp on the criteria to apply for it, which of course relies on 12 months of payroll history, divided by 12, so you get a 1 month average times 2.5. So you get that amount of money. A narrower group is intimately familiar with how you can spend that money, because there are significant restrictions under the PPP. You have to use 75% or more for payroll. You have to use the rest of it just for specific limited purposes, mortgage interest, rents, utilities, those things. We have 4 different versions of SBA regulations that have been issued just in the past few weeks. What we don't have is substantial clarity on the forgiveness provision. So we have a huge number of businesses that think they're getting this money, that think that forgiveness is just a given because there are references to it in statute. What they don't recognize is that 2 things are going to happen. One is that those forgiveness applications are going to be very closely scrutinized, and the SBA at some point, hopefully in the next few days, we expected it a few weeks ago, we still don't have it, but hopefully soon, the SBA is going to identify what the criteria will be and what the documentation will be that people need to use to apply for forgiveness under those loans. The second is I think the bigger issue that the SBA is now starting to allude to, which is you have to avow when you apply for a PPP loan that that loan is necessary for you to continue your operations as a result of the COVID-19 virus. And people are treating that like it's just a box to mark, to check off. And the SBA is now coming forward, and they've written some material on this so far, but they're coming forward with, we anticipate, with some significant regulations. And my prediction is they're going to demand that people provide proof that they met that criteria back when they applied. And that's why the SBA has now given a grace period up until May 7th. If any business thinks that they did not meet that criteria and just saw this as money that they can get, but didn't really need it because they had reserves, because they had other lines of credit or other financial resources available to them, or because their business just didn't drop and they took that money, they have until May 7th to return it. Otherwise, there's sanctions that are anywhere from declining the forgiveness to 5 to 30 years of prison time. So what we're anticipating is, now that they're starting to allude to that and the money has been exhausted, and people have realized that these loans went to companies that perhaps didn't need them and could have continued to operate anyway, the SBA has realized that they made a mistake. They didn't make clear that these were going to be enforceable issues. They are now making that clear, and in the coming months, my expectation is it's going to be a mess. We're going to see potential prosecutions. We're going to see the SBA demand proof that those loans did meet that criteria. So please, people, don't think it's free money. It's not free money. You have to prove that you needed it and that you used it during that 8-week period for your payroll and those limited purposes. For the economic injury disaster loan, we've had people who applied for that weeks ago. For that type of a loan, you have to document what your actual loss is, what the harm is that you've suffered, and you can apply for the EID. Now, under the initial description of the program, within a few days, you have eligibility for an initial grant of $10,000. Within a few days of that, you get appointed somebody who is going to be your personal liaison, because you have to get that directly from the SBA. We have people who've been waiting for a month and still don't have that individual who's been designated, still aren't moving forward on the EID loans. Largely, we think because the SBA is just so overwhelmed with the PPP program that they don't have time for EIDLs. So for those people who are looking at maybe not a harm in the past, maybe not payroll needs, but other harms that you're going to apply for, please recognize EID will likely take a substantial amount of time, and you will have to be patient for that. Now, bridge loans that have always been available are still available. That's a $25,000 loan through the SBA if you already have a relationship with an SBA lender and have already had some involvement with the SBA program. You do have the benefit of certain tax credits. Talk to your CPA. I think Ed's on the line. I'm sure there are good CPAs out there ready to advise you. But look at those tax credits and how you can benefit from that. And look at state and local benefits. The CARES Act provided substantial amounts of money to states. There are a multitude of state and local programs. In Colorado, OEDIT is doing a great job of getting that information out there. They actually have a full list of all the programs that are available in the state for different counties, different municipalities. They have done just an amazing job at that. And if anybody needs that link or needs that information or needs links or information on anything I'm talking about, please reach out to me. We know every situation is different, but please understand the CARES Act programs are going to be a mess before it gets cleaned up, and that will be a long process.
Hey, Justin, thank you. There's a question actually from Cynthia. We might as well answer it now since it's directly related to your response. You see that there? I was given a PPP loan. I am the sole employee of an S Corp. How do I pay myself from the PPP money? I set up a separate bank account and need to pay myself by Thursday, the 10th, after the loan is funded.
Yeah, that is a great question. And Cynthia, if you'll reach out to me offline, we can address that specifically. The SBA, a little over a week ago, their third form of proposed rules, it spells out in detail exactly how you pay yourself if you're self-employed or the sole employee of your own S Corp. And so rather than walking you through that, which would probably take about 15 minutes, I would love to send that to you and then get on the phone with you, and we'll just walk through that and make sure that you're comfortable with exactly what you're doing. It is very important to comply with that, again, under potential criminal sanctions that the SBA can issue. So I'll look forward to follow up directly on that. So, and thanks for the question. It's a great question and very important. And frankly, a question we wish we had the answer to a month ago rather than just over a week ago.
Justin, it presents quite a conundrum. I would imagine there are a lot of business owners that went after the loan because they heard about it. They were told that it was going to dry up quickly. They filled out their applications. They got the money. They don't necessarily need the money now, but they don't know that they won't need it somewhere down the road, because this is an issue that can be long lasting. How do they deal with that? They
very, very carefully. They deal with that very carefully. And the answer changed roughly 3 or 4 days ago when the SBA came out with their fourth version of rules. Because before that, we thought, there's no specificity to this, there's no definition. If you act in good faith and you believe it's necessary, then I was still cautioning people, please know that you can document some support for it being necessary for ongoing operations. And if you can't document that, if you can't justify that, then you really shouldn't be making that certification on your application and on your acceptance of the funds. Then a few days ago, when the SBA came out with an answer, and if you look it up, frequently asked question 31, they keep track of frequently asked questions. They added number 31 that said, hey, by the way, we consider necessary, it's not that you have to exhaust all of your financial resources. You don't have to sell off all your assets in order to pay payroll. That's not what they're considering necessary. But you do have to show that you don't have other resources that you can turn to. And that sent up a big red flag that what I was projecting was correct. That they are going to come forward at some point and scrutinize that avowal in that certification in those applications. And when they scrutinize that, they're going to look at, did you have some type of economic downturn, or were you just on the verge of running out of funds? Something that you can document that it was truly necessary and you did not have alternative sources you can turn to. That's why the SBA came up with this grace period until May 7th for people to give it back, because they realized that so many people had applied and taken this money. And I've been, advising people. I've had a number of people come to me and say, well, we're concerned about this. And the answer is, unless you can document it, my advice is err on the side of caution. Return it. We're exploring the possibility. If you just needed it to cover some small portion, can you keep part of it and return the rest? Because there's no prepayment penalty to it. I think it would depend on the bank. You'd want to talk to the bank that you're working with. But you just want to be careful. And if you can't justify it now, then wait and pursue the economic injury disaster loan later. Because the purpose of the PPP is to cover the 8 weeks of payroll you need now. That program ends June 30th, but they'll be out of money long before then. So if you need it now and you can justify it and use 75% or more for payroll, please get it now. This will be your last chance, because the money that's available now is going to be gone very quickly. If you don't need it now, but you're concerned about the future, put in for the economic injury disaster loan. Start putting together information on what the impact is for you. And then if it turns out you don't need it because things turn around, then you don't have to take it. You can just decline it if it gets approved.
Excellent advice, and I'm sure many people on the line today are heeding your advice, and you might even hear from a few of them. Next question: should we anticipate issues with employee leave and new unemployment benefits?
On employee leave and employee benefits, that's an interesting question. I think what we're going to see and what that's going to be is really a minimal impact. And that's certainly what we've seen so far. And what we've seen out of the Families First Act was, hey, people can take, when it came out, it described people can take leave if they're sick with this virus, if they're caring for somebody who's sick with this virus, if a doctor has quarantined them, or if they have a child at home, and then it expanded the FMLA to add another 10 weeks if they had a child at home who needed their care. Well, then soon after that, we got the at-home, the stay-at-home rules, and everybody went home anyway, right? So what we saw was really a minimal impact, at least what I've seen with my clients and the businesses I work with, was that even though when it first came out, we anticipated abuses, we really just didn't see that occur. We didn't see abuses in part because people were going home anyway and working remotely, businesses were being shut down. So we didn't see the abuses that we originally expected. And when people are going back to work, there's, at least what we're seeing now is, as a result of the end of the flu season, the warming weather, or the effects of the stay-at-home orders, whatever it is, we are seeing declining numbers. Assuming we continue to see declining numbers and people are getting better, and even better, Peter, if a virus, if an antivirus comes out, if a treatment comes out that's effective, then it really won't have much impact at all. Where we do see an impact is with the unemployment benefits. And now we have unemployment benefits that are available for self-employed, for independent contractors, 1099s. We see an expansion to what we normally haven't seen. And we have federal provisions that'll be in place through the end of July that give people additional monies per week, assuming it's that they can confirm that it's pandemic related. That adds an additional 13 weeks. So in Colorado, that makes it 39 weeks. And the state, now has the forms in place. You can apply online if it's pandemic related. And so we are actually seeing people in certain wage ranges who are going to their employers and saying, hey, leave me on unemployment for a while. this is, this is a nice break for me. I get 39 weeks of paid vacation, and we'll have to see where that goes, and the extent to which that continues, because there's only so long employers want to furlough people, but there are many people in that wage range that are making substantial amounts through unemployment, and that are okay with remaining unemployed. So unless another significant breakout occurs in the fall and they renew these laws, it's really not going to have the leave laws and the FMLA laws really aren't going to have much of any impact at all. Please know, for those employers out there, you still do have to post notice. You can find the notice at the Department of Labor wage division website. You can find that, you can post that, you can email that to your employees if they're working remotely, but you are required by law to do that. But otherwise, I don't think we're going to see much of a change other than the impact of the unemployment benefits.
There's been some controversy around that, where some unemployeds are actually making more than they were making at their jobs.
Right.
Can that be rectified?
If they change the unemployment provisions.
Presumably they know it's a problem, I would guess.
Yeah, please recognize the thresholds are still governed in each state by those state provisions. Mm-hmm. So you still have to meet the eligibility thresholds, with the exception of what was changed by the Family First provisions and the Department of Treasury regulations. The Department of Treasury regulations, when they came out, is 125 pages. And if we see changes to that, then we will. But I think the odds are we're not. I think they're just going to let it run its course and then not renew it. Okay. So when that ends as of the end of July, then the people who pursue it afterwards aren't going to get the additional federal component.
All right, thank you. So Justin, what will businesses do if they cannot perform their obligations to others, their clients, their vendors, or their contractors?
Yeah, that's a good question. And that, for the future of what that's going to be, that's probably going to be a struggle. I think businesses are going to struggle with that. Our economy is taking a hit. That those repercussions are going to continue to move out in waves. A few things businesses will be looking at. One is, to the extent business owners or executives, managers, what have you, to the extent they have contracts with other entities, you want to look at what's called force majeure clauses. The language of those clauses are quite different, but the essence of it is, hey, listen, if we have some type of a crisis, then we're excused for delayed performance or non-performance. And the type of crisis that's typically contemplated when those provisions are written into contracts is earthquakes, floods, natural disasters, acts of terrorism, those types of things. So you'd have to look at the specific language to determine, okay, does a pandemic fall within this? Am I excused from some performance under the contract? But that does give some outs. I've seen such language in some lease agreements, but usually they're more landlord favorable than tenant favorable, even in commercial leases. So that's a rarity. But I've certainly seen it in other contracts, government contracts, individual supply, franchise, what have you. So that's going to be an issue. One other option is to look at business interruption coverage on insurance. We have a litigation team that is litigating those on an ongoing basis to push for coverage for businesses that have that lapse. And we'll see, even more development there. That's going to be a significant issue. I mean, to the extent that some states were exploring legislation to mandate that insurance carriers have to provide coverage regardless of the language of their policy, that they have to provide that business interruption coverage. So watch for that. That's to be determined, but that's also going to be an ongoing struggle. We are unfortunately going to see closures. We're going to see bankruptcies. That's just an unavoidable side effect. We want to make sure people do that right, but we also want to make sure that we try to keep businesses afloat. That's my purpose. That's my vision. I want to try to keep businesses out of closings and bankruptcies as much as possible. And hand in hand with that, we're going to see industry adjustments. We're already seeing it. We're seeing new airline policies. We've seen restaurants convert. We've seen webinars rather than seminars, and it's a shame because I really love seeing people in person. But we're seeing the industries change, and that's going to be an ongoing issue.
Yep, certainly will be. Well, we've got about 10 minutes before our hour is up, and I want to remind everybody out there that if you have questions, click on the Q&A button there and shoot us questions. And while you're developing or writing your question, typing your questions in, thought I'd ask one last question to Justin, and that is, what about non-business owners and retirees, Justin? How are they going to be affected by the CARES Act?
Well, yeah, there are a few things. One is, everybody knows they can expect these checks back, and that's if you fall within a certain wage range as a single person, as a couple, as a head of household, if you have minor children at home. So, people are expecting that. Some people have already been getting those checks of the direct stimulus from the IRS. Others can expect that in the future. You see student loan and government-backed loan forbearance. So check with your lenders if you have student loans, if you have government-backed loans, check with that, see if you can postpone those payments, and the interest doesn't accrue. So, why not take advantage of that in this period of time? Many people are still looking toward estate planning. We have extremely low interest rates. We have hopefully a real estate market that stays active because of that. We have estate planning mechanisms if people want to lower their taxable estate if they were to pass. This is a time that we can look at various trust mechanisms, grant or retained annuity trusts, charitable leads annuity trusts, intentionally defective grantor trusts. And we don't have the time to go into a description of that, but there are ways to lower estates and handle assets, particularly because of the low interest rates. So, this is a time, and Peter, you talked about some of the opportunities here as well. This is a time that people should be alert and aware of those opportunities, take advantage of those types of things, and then just brace. My recommendation for people is, don't necessarily run up a huge amount of credit. Try to keep some cash reserves. Try to keep those investments intact with Peter. Hold the course and recognize that everything is going to be okay. I guess if I were to project, what is that going to be for individuals, for retirees? The answer is just hold on and everything's going to be fine.
Okay, thank you. Steve's asked a question. Steve says, can you discuss some of the possible long-term implications with what's going on in the oil industry?
Ooh, Peter, you want to take that? I can add my 2 cents. I can tell you what's going on with our oil and gas section.
Why don't you start then?
Yeah, we do a fair amount of oil and gas work within the firm, and I shouldn't say that in the present tense. I should say that in the past tense, because up until a few weeks ago, we had an extremely robust and active oil and gas section. They are still active. We are still involved in representing oil and gas companies, but that's most likely, unless something changes, that's going to be a struggle for an extended period of time. And that's a long conversation. I'd love to have that offline as well.
Yeah.
Peter, what do you think?
Well, Steve, I would tell Steve that I would stay away from oil stocks currently. We aren't touching them. I know some clients have called and said, well, maybe we should buy some so-and-so in another company. We're not allowed to use company names, so I'm not going to say that on our webinar, but we'd stay away from those unless you really have ice in your veins and are willing to hold on for a long time. Any other questions out there before we wrap up? Well, since there are no more questions, I would like to thank you all for being here today and listening in. We hope you got some good value out of the discussion today. Justin, I want to thank you for being our first speaker, our first guest speaker. You did a wonderful job and provided us with some very good quality information. If any of you are interested in reaching out to Justin afterward, please let us know. Text us or email us, give us a call. We'll give you Justin's information. The next presentation is, or the next webinar is May 4th, this coming Monday at 2 p.m. And the title is Channeling Your Inner Gardener, Native and Pollinator Plants. And we have Master Gardener Nicole McCrory, who will be speaking to us about her gardening skills. And what we've found, and this is interesting, and many of you might agree, that the #1 activity of retirees is gardening. So since we're staying at home and we have fewer things we're able to do, we can certainly garden in our backyard. We hope that you'll enjoy the presentation on May 4th, 2 p.m., and you'll see the invitations coming out shortly. Thank you all for joining us. Bye-bye.
Thank you.